inking. The steps we're going to use in all of our cartooning is we're going to sketch lightly, detail, ink, erase, and color. Let's sketch something lightly. We'll sketch two can do here. Got the basics. I have my circle, my construction lines. Go into the detail. So I'm defining and detailing. Put his eyes in. Now I need to add in his stripes. Feathers on top of his head, which come right off that center line. I'm going to open his mouth up, give him a tongue. For the finished drawings, we go to our markers. These are very, very thin. And you notice when I'm using the markers too, I'm not pressing hard because you want to keep the marker as consistent as possible. If you take this and press hard on it, a 0.3 is going to look like a 0.4 very quickly because it'll get flattened down. So it's important to draw as lightly as you can. Now this comes down to style. What looks good to you? There's no correct answer here, okay, except for the fact that when you're outlining a character, it generally works best to do the most important features in a thicker line, or the outline of the character in a thicker line, and then do smaller details on that character in a thinner line. Also, when you're adding your character to an illustration, comic strip, you'll want to have details in the background, which may want to be smaller. All that becomes part of your artistic style, and there's no right or wrong. When you're creating something with a character, though, the key is to be consistent. One little trick when you're inking, ink can come through the paper, especially if you use something like a Sharpie. So it's always nice to use a buffer sheet to put under your art when you're inking. So I've saved myself a sheet of paper. I let the ink dry a little bit because it will smudge. Use this nice soft white eraser. Don't press too hard because you can tear the paper. And now you've got a nice black and white illustration. All your composition lines and sketchings erased, and you're going to be really happy that you sketched lightly because you don't have to press too much. You've got your detail in, you've got your ink. Now if you want to, you can go ahead and color it. Make them look nice and colorful, or leave them black and white. That's totally up to you. Okay, now we're going to work off this illustration, and we're going to try a couple of inking techniques. If I'm going to stay with a black and white illustration, I'm going to want to make it look a little interesting. I can come in with a thinner marker. Let's go with a 4 and add some shading. Now this is going to give the illusion of being another color. Now we've added some dimension to the character just by adding some horizontal lines. The mouth, fill in black if you want. And I want to add a little bit something more. I want to give a little more dimension, make it look a little more rounded, or show a little more depth. Well, in here, inside these feathers, let's go in another direction with our lines. This is all experimentation, so you have to just play around and see what you like. Now it looks actually like it's getting darker toward the outside here because we added a few lines there. And then let's go back in this direction. Now you're even getting a little more depth. This is called cross-hatching. Now in something like this, here's a full adventure of a comic I did. Got a lot of different little techniques going on here. I've got these lines giving some depth, got an explosion of liquid. So I've got lines radiating out from there. And see, I didn't even have to draw the whole character here. I just did the splash, and you can see his hand there, another hand here. So that's a nice comic effect. In this section here, you've got a lot of neat little things going on. We've got embarrassment lines, we've got the deep shading in his hat, and we've got some background cross-hatching. And you'll notice wherever you get it darker, it adds more depth. So that's just something you need to play with, develop your own style, what works for you and what doesn't, and have fun with it, because there's no right or wrong answer. This page is entirely inked with a professional brush. It's actually very, very thin, called a Winsor & Newton red sable brush. You dip it in ink and you brush some of the ink off it so it's not totally saturated, and you can, just like a marker, make very thin strokes, and you get what is known in the cartooning world as thick and thin. You'll notice variations, like his nose is a little bit thinner. When it gets toward the head, it's a little thicker, and that actually provides more depth in your art because your eye is going to be drawn toward the area of most black. Thicker lines you see even in something like here, you can tell that that's got depth to it because it's thicker. This can also be achieved with the markers, and I'll show you how that's done. Okay, let's take some of these characters we used for our expressions. Let's define them. Come in, and I'm still using the 0.4. Nice thing is if you find it's too thin, you can go over it. But if you notice, you can make it thicker just by staying there a little longer. You can also press down a little bit and change the feel of the marker. Okay, that's getting a little bit thick and I don't want to ruin the marker, so let's take the 4 and we'll go up to a 6 and see if we can do something with the 6. You can tell right away that's a little bit thicker line, and I like that better on the character. So you can also use the tip of the marker to make one line, then underneath use the side. The side of the marker is going to give you more ink. It's going to look more shadowed. And you'll notice when I need to do a line that's coming toward me, I turn the paper instead of having to try to make my hand go in a direction it doesn't want to. Usually pulling toward you is the easiest way to ink. So going toward me, and I start off thin and turn the marker a little bit to get a thicker line. Now this is just a style that works for me and that I've grown comfortable with over the years. There are lots of cartoons out there where the line never varies. TV, animation, like South Park or something like that, the lines never vary. They're very consistent. It's a more of a computerized line, and that works great for that kind of property. That's part of artistic style. Now, see here, I'm doing little details. Instead of having just a round, sharp elbow, I'm coming in and leaving it open a little bit, and that makes it look furry. Same thing coming in here. Oh, well, let's add some fur to it. And the top of the tail is a little bit thinner line, the bottom's a little thicker. And see, I've got my shape there, and I know he needs toes, so we just add a couple lines in there, we've got toes. Now I want to go and do some inking technique, add some little highlights to the side of his face. You can have fun with it and do what works for you, but that just adds a little more detail, a little more dimension to the character. This mouth, now look at the mouth now. If you were going to color this in, you'd probably want to leave it exactly the way it is, because you can make the mouth, the back of the mouth, a dark red, the tongue a pink. However, if you're going to keep it in black and white, you want it to stand out as the inside of a mouth, so you'd want to go in and color this in. And depending on your style, you can make all of the inside of your mouth black. You'll notice right now that your eye is immediately drawn right to the mouth, because that's the area of most black. And that's something that's very important with cartoons, is to use black to attract the eye of your reader to a section you want them to notice. This character's floating in space. If I just go ahead and draw a shadow underneath them, and I add a little bit of style to it with my inking, a little cross-hatching. Now, all of a sudden he's anchored on the floor. He looks like he is standing where he is on the page. He jumps off the page actually at you.